최근 고용서비스에서 인공지능을 활용하는 사례가 점점 증가하고 있습니다. 국내외 기업들이 채용 시 서류 평가와 면접에서 AI 평가를 필수로 채택하고 있는데요. 수시 채용이 보편화된 만큼 AI 채용이 시간적 효율성과 공정성에 대한 기대로 긍정적인 평가를 받고 있죠. 그러나 데이터의 편향성으로 인한 불공정, 평가 기준의 모호함에 대한 우려들도 제기되고 있습니다. 이번 세션에서는 AI 기반 고용 서비스 사례, 도전과 교훈이라는 주제로 한국에서도 점차 확대될 AI 기반 고용 서비스 활용 방안에 대해 깊이 있는 논의를 해보고자 합니다. 이번 세션은 박영범 한성대학교 경제학과 교수님께서 좌장을 맡아주시고 이수희 영국 켄트대학교 경영대학 교수, 미겔 페로밍고 전 독일 노동사회부 선임 컨설턴트, 후안 이반 마르틴 라타이스 국제노동기구 스킬 및 고용가능성 부문 전문가께서 발표와 토론에 참여해 주셨습니다. 박영범 교수님과 연사분들을 무대로 모시겠습니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 그럼 박영범 교수님 진행 부탁드리겠습니다.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Youngbom Park. I'm going to moderate this session titled AI-based employment services, cases and challenges. Technology sometimes help people having good life, and sometimes technology help employers to find workers they want to hire, and they can search for potential employees' reputation or personalities through internet, and also job seekers can get a lot of information about their potential employers, then apply for the job suitable for them. Now, with the introduction of AI, we have much opportunity to improve efficiency of the job placement service market as well as enhance fairness of the market. However, technology such as AI-based job matching service has some limitations. Technology is often not easing selection of workers, rather making selection process a headache. Now, many employers complain they receive many job application documents which are copied to each other. And these days, many companies, technology, especially big ones, machine first select job seekers, then only selected job seekers can have the opportunity to job interview. Can we trust this machine? What are AI criteria for selecting job seekers? If can be guaranteed that employers not implement his or her preference or prejudice to this AI machine. Particularly, this is big issue in South Korea because we have so-called Fair Recruitment Act, and which was enacted a couple of years ago. In this session, I'm very honored to have this session with three excellent speakers. We have three speakers, one from Kent University of UK. He is Korean, but Professor Lee Soo-hee. He's been in UK for 40 years, almost 40 years. Still he misses South Korea and Asia very much. That's what he just talked to me minutes ago. Then we have Mr. Mikel Feromingo, former senior consultant of German Minister of Labor and Social Affairs. He'll talk about improving PES with AI, with example of the France and Germany and so on. And now we have the Mr. Juan Iban Martin Lavais, specialist in skills and employment of ILO. Now we have 90 minutes of the today. Then we have 20 minutes for each speakers. then 30 minutes for discussion and questions. Now, first we'll hear from Mr. Professor Lee Soo-hee.
안녕하세요. 저는 영국에서 온 이수희라고 합니다. Good afternoon. My name is Soo-hee Lee. I teach at University of Kent, England. Today I will talk about AI-based employment services, algorithmic management, and skills gap. Instead of explaining in detail what AI-based employment services are, I will lay out a little bit broader background and context in which these kinds of new services emerge. And also, I will spend a little bit of time raising yet another issue of skills gap, mismatch, and structural unemployment. So more structural problems in the labor market rather than the specific types of services we may design and implement with the help of AI. Okay. First of all, organizations have been incrementally but very speedily engaging with artificial intelligence. What does that mean for companies? That's altering how managers are spending their time, also what skills they think are very important for their success. This boils down to three issues. Decision-making in companies are increasingly based on data analytics rather than individual intuition. Companies are born digital, such as platform companies like Google and Amazon, or for the case of China, Alibaba, Tencent. These companies are masters of data, and what they do, not only in day-to-day activities, but long-term strategic decisions, are heavily relying on analytics. Companies also need to redefine their understanding of strategic judgment in that sense. So AI in organizations are increasingly adopted, and AI can display some cognitive skills such as intelligence, learning, and ability to process and analyze massive amount of data for various of activities and processes. As developments in computational services, computational speed, data storage and retrieval, sensors and algorithms have dramatically reduced the cost of making predictions, forecasting, and organizations have turned to AI to anticipate new trends and circumvent traditional cognitive limits. ChatGPT, Jasper, and Rysonic are some examples of generative AI that can produce original content in response to user prompt very quickly and in very much detail. So we've already seen many examples of how this kind of new types of AI can be used in a very fruitful and productive ways. So generative AI can help organizations build more powerful, personable, personalized content and custom experiences. And this also applies to various types of employment services and processes. When does AI make sense? AI makes sense when time reduction can be achieved. AI makes sense when a cost reduction happens. In other words, organizations use AI when they can reduce time by using AI, when they can reduce cost. Also, they use it when AI is more accurate. They also use it that AI can be assessed or evaluated in accurate ways and so on. So these are four conditions under which AI can be used for organizational processes. So in short, AI is used in human resource domain or human capital domain, mainly in terms of talent management and development, raising productivity and efficiency, and also addressing change management challenges. So in terms of talent management, recruitment, induction, career management, training, even well-being, all these traditional HR practices are under AI influence. Unilever is a prime example where they have adopted AI for their recruitment practice. Unilever AI technology had good impression with many college graduate applicants. I will not go through all the details, but basically what they have done is allow these graduates to link their social media, like LinkedIn account profile page, and then they can automatically upload CV and all the other processes of like taking tests and so on, and receiving the application result. All the processes are, in some ways, more automated with the use of AI. So since 2016, Unilever started using algorithms for application management, and Unilever posts jobs online, social media platforms such as Facebook, and then it uses Pymetrics and other software to conduct assessment and interviews, record candidates' tone and voice, and body language, etc., and use AI to analyze each answer to form an analysis report of each candidate to interview them for the initial screening. The first year of launch, by deploying AI plus recruitment, that is the name of the program, in multiple languages in 68 countries, Unilever shortened this recruitment cycle from 4 months to 2 weeks. So enormous amount of time saving and efficiencies gained, saved more than £1 million in cost reduction, and increased even employee diversity by 16%. So by adopting AI, rather than decreasing diversity, they have increased diversity. So the so-called AI plus recruitment has two main functions. Function one is to achieve job matching, generate labels, and complete portraits of individual applicants through key factor association, and build a knowledge graph that connects entities. It's mainly implemented in 3 scenarios, such as talent search, resume analysis, CV analysis, and talent assessment. Function 2 is to improve interview efficiency, which is mainly implemented in AI interviews and robot chat scenarios. So these two major functions correspond to main application scenarios, namely talent search, resume analysis, talent assessment, and AI interviews and daily communication. Potential risk of this program includes illusion of fairness caused by algorithmic bias and discrimination. So it seems fairer and more transparent. In fact, there may be built-in biases. The digital distance between organizations and candidates, because it eliminates human touch and interaction. So somewhat people feel detached from the interview process and so on. So recently, the Korean government-supported program has been launched. This is basically pilot program. It's not really fully developed, but Ministry of Employment and Education, Labor, and Korean Employment Information Service, they will launch 7 pilot projects to support improvement of AI-based services, basically. Their focus is on strengthening job matching services through advanced job and talent recommendations. The ministry plans to complete the proof of concept, so like prototype service, for the 7 pilot projects by the end of the year, and then plans to launch full-scale public service in the second half of next year. So this would work sort of like a job information portal that allows kind of full-scale service from job information, matching till contract, basically. So this type of service will address the process of recruitment, job search, job matching, all more automated. Therefore, the government wishes that by fully introducing AI-based service, we expect a dramatic improvement in customized services for individuals and companies. So the rationale is understandable, and also it's well-planned and supported program. But as I mentioned, it could raise certain concerns. Also, by just focusing on developing, say, efficient services that would include many applicants and many companies, right? We may overlook, say, other structural problems that may emerge in the process of implementing this kind of services. Also, another issue may be, this may be beneficial for small and medium-sized companies as an infrastructure, but large companies may want to develop their own, company-specific platforms. And in some ways, they have actually done this long ago, and then they're in the stage of evolving the old legacy platforms into, say, more AI-based systems of recruitment and employment. So I just want to qualify that. Then where does these AI-based employment services come from? Broadly speaking, it's part of the activities that we name human resource analytics or people analytics that have become popularized and developed over the last 10 years or so. So depending on the industry and organization, HR analytics encompasses big data from multiple internal and external sources, including social media, sensors, and enterprise content and mobile devices. So how can the HR professional grasp the opportunity? Deloitte report, as old as 1915, talked about how this kind of analytics actually reduced a lot of time and activities, and then raised efficiency, right? So basically, digital staffing and people analytics is based on data gained from behavioral analytics, web scraping, so basically personal profiles and postings on social media can be collected and analyzed for job matching. Also gamification, which is also part of the tests nowadays in screening candidates. However, these kind of activities have raised concerns in terms of legal and ethical practices. Google, among many other companies, have been heavily involved in digitalization and informatization, what they call, and have adopted data analytics pervasively in their human resource practices. As early as 2006, Google launched 300 question questionnaire and then tracked the personality of Google employees, measuring both in-work characteristics and out-of-work characteristics of all the employees and so on. So you could imagine how much information they are actually gathering from their own employees and trying to maximize these attributes into the processes that they are running, especially in terms of creative and innovative work. So at Google, human resource meets science and technology, and the goal of Google's people analytics is to complement human decision makers, not to replace them. But that's the dictum, but the reality may not necessarily remain in the same way. In the earlier days, by using data analytics, Google reduced the number of interviews and then specified 4 people are the optimal number for interviews and so on for each position, revealed the optimal organizational size and shape of various departments, showed how they can better manage maternity leaves, for example, in the organization, and they have 50% reduction in defections. And created agenda for employees' first 4 days of work schedule and boost productivity by 15% and so on.
Professor Lee, 5 minutes.
Yeah. Nevertheless, as I mentioned, AI analytics cannot capture. They're only as good as questions we ask. So that's why we say prompts are quite important. You know, it depends on, their answers depend on, their solutions depend on what kind of specific questions we ask and then what kind of conditions we attach to those questions and so on. The strongest predictor for a person's future behavior is their past performance itself. And for companies using AI-based big data, test scores, a certain level of correlation could be taken as threshold. But correlations are not always causations. So we don't necessarily know why this person behaved in this way and that way and so on. We can see the patterns, predominant patterns, but we cannot explain the reasons behind often, and that could cause problems. So organizations use data analytics and sensors and wearables and platforms and other applications to drive their human resource systems and achieve high performance. But this leads on to the broader issue of algorithmic management. Algorithms are widely used by companies to manage, direct, recruit, and evaluate, even terminate, fire workers. AI will improve workflow, for instance, optimal job allocation, cut costs, and improve predictive power in all dimensions of human resource. From this point of view, AI-based algorithmic management offers organizations chance to delegate human decision-making power to more efficient and effective technology. However, management by AI, by definition, is about removing the human element from the decision-making process. The mechanic objectivity of AI-based management process has the effect of putting workers at the mercy of processes they have little control or recourse over. So this could give a good excuse for the management, right? It's not what I decided, is what the machine told us to do, if you like. So the human agency and responsibility can be conveniently sidelined, and then machine comes into that position and then make decisions for us. As a result, AI deployment at work, technological unemployment may occur and significant scale, bringing further precariousness in employment conditions. In other words, working life can be even more difficult as a result of this. So then how do we address these issues of responsible algorithmic decision-making? We need to think about 3 different levels: individual, organizational, and societal. Addressing issues like lack of privacy, limited freedom of choice, issues of data quality and algorithmic capacity, as well as power imbalances, asymmetries, and privacy, proxy discrimination, right? Then the structural gap emerges. So AI-based employment services may help us to deal with, say, a large amount of information, right? Even help us to address the issue of information overload. If I have, like, say, 2,000 choices for job application, it may reduce it to 3 for me to consider. So I only look at 3 companies and 3 types of jobs, and so on. So that's helpful. But if you look at the whole labor market structurally, right, individuals looking for jobs, applying for jobs, and so on, it doesn't reflect their value systems and preferences, right? So the reason why China and Korea suffer so much from a high level of youth unemployment is very much to do with Confucian values and additional value preferences that candidates add to their job preferences. In other words, to put it very simple, young people do not work in factories. Young people do not work in remote towns and cities and so on. They all work in Seoul. Same is true in China. They all work in Shanghai and Beijing. They all work in big companies as white-collar workers and in public corporations and so on. So many small companies suffer from lack of candidates, and many young people delay their employment, and then they also make their conditions precarious. So this kind of mismatch of expectations and mismatch of values create structural unemployment in the job market that originally comes from the problem of automation. So in other words, in Korea and China, for example, structural unemployment is not purely due to the time lag created by automation and creation of new types of employment by entrepreneurs. There is time lag. Therefore, there's problem of unemployment, but then it gets worsened due to value mismatch. So many companies think about future skills gap. Even in the US, for example, if you look at this diagram, right, there are many job openings from 2010, but actual hires, actual employment contracts were made at a much lower level. Why? Why is it this case? Because the candidates in the job market have not got the requisite skills required for the jobs that companies are hiring for. Why does that happen? Because universities and training centers and so on do not know what skills are appropriate and useful in the future. And this kind of time horizon is even less than 5 years now. Because 5 years ago, all the universities were keen to teach coding skills now. Most developers nowadays say that 95% of codings can be done more efficiently by AI. So what should universities do? For that matter, what should even companies do for skills training, skills upgrading, and so on? So reskilling and upskilling agenda, we all agree, very important, but how do we go about it when the future is so uncertain? And if you look at this diagram, for example, the jobs that are likely to be vulnerable or displaced in the future, right? Before we are talking about relatively more manual service-based occupations and so on. Now, all these knowledge-intensive and professional services are vulnerable, including my kind of job, university professors. Why do we need university professors? When the machines can do equally good job and so on, maybe we need some, but we don't need, say, thousands and thousands of university professors and so on. So that is the important structural problem even the United States is suffering from at the moment. In conclusion, AI-based employment services and algorithmic decision-making holds great promise for efficiency and predictability. However, if used unconstrained, incorrect, or unregulated manner, the loss of privacy, widespread manipulation, discrimination, and constrained self-discrimination are some of the consequences, bad consequences that may arise. Future technological development related to AI and machine learning, relying on algorithmic decision-making, are unpredictable today. However, what can be done today is to initiate critical and timely discourse about how algorithms can be used responsibly in assisting employment services. So we cannot have full confidence even when, say, the example of Korean government introducing like a new, say, portal type platform, right? We cannot be entirely dependent on justice, efficiency, and so on. So the critical point I'm making is whilst introducing this kind of efficient services, we also need to look at broader structural problems like a mismatch in the labor market and long-term structural unemployment of young people in the labor market. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Now, now Mr. Peromingo, and maybe for 90 minutes. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me to speak. I don't know how familiar you are with names in Europe, but if you wondered how my name, Miguel Peromingo, matches to where I was presented to come from, Germany, it doesn't fit at all. It's not a German name, it's a Spanish name. And that's because my parents migrated from Spain to Germany before I was born, actually. I was born in Germany. It was a time when Germans built a lot of cars. They still build a lot of cars, but then they built even more. And they were looking for factory workers all over Europe, and Spain was one of the countries where they recruited. So from an early age, basically from birth, I was confronted with that work and life is very connected. It can even change your country where you live in. It also made me think a lot about, when I was young and also until today, that it's important to get integrated in a country that you are. I now have the benefit of having different identities, a Spanish one, a German one. I consider myself a European. I lived in several countries in Europe, but I know that my parents were struggling a lot to adapt to Germany when they came from Spain. So I guess one of the reasons why I work with employment services, public employment services in particular, for more than 20 years now, is that public employment services deal with exactly that. They help people integrate, they help people find the right jobs, and they help people that struggle because they're unemployed or because they have other issues that make them, that lower their employability or keep them caught up in a low skills profile, like my parents were also, although they could have done maybe a lot of other things. I would like to talk about how artificial intelligence is impacting that work of public employment services. And I brought a couple of examples from European countries. As my speaker before, my co-panelist mentioned, it's an area that is in development. You have to look at it from a macroeconomic perspective. I'd like to look at it also more from a micro perspective. Of course, it's moving in an HR context. So why the HR context? Because public employment services are dealing with vulnerable groups, mainly with people that are unemployed. But it also, of course, it's an HR service at the end of the day. So a lot of this has been mentioned already, but the HR context we move in is that, well, it's recruitment and payroll automation is underway with AI already. It's cutting down hiring times already because a lot of the frontline or first level service, HR service, is done by AI, simply. And that's more time effective, as you want to call it that. Predictive modeling for staff satisfaction is used in HR, also in employment services. Support skills management, that's something that I would like to go a bit more into detail in a second. And, well, an overall HR tech transformation. There are more tools used now that are AI-based. In PES, in public employment service context, this basically boils down to data management. PES have been dealing with data already forever, with administrative data, very sensitive, very protected data of benefit recipients, for example. Now it's enriched by big data, okay? So there is a lot of new data sources being mined there. And AI is helping to make it more transparent for the job seekers, having the job seekers have more access to new data that they didn't have before. or that they had to go to the employment service to get. Now it's more accessible. That's a huge advantage in the countries that are using it. The employer support has become a bit more fine-tuned already. Many employers, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, struggle with formulating vacancies that reflect the needs they have, and AI can help them with it. And there are a couple of countries that are using that quite effectively to help employers build a vacancy. And obviously there is back office support in the employment services itself. This is just very briefly the spread of the uses, the AI use in public employment services. So there are advanced public employment services like your own one in Korea, which uses many different tools, AI-based tools, platforms. And there are ones that only started using it, and there are some considerable amount of public employment services that are not using AI yet. When it is in use, it has clear advantages. You use more data. It doesn't necessarily mean it's more quality data, but there is more data available. And it's also used in a more effective way and more efficient. It involves the clients in all those countries, let's say Sweden, Australia, where that have a freedom of choice system, where the job seekers can choose who they want to be serviced by and what type of service they want to have as a support for their case. It's also more AI-based. So the AI helps the customer travel through the different steps necessary to improve his or her employability. The AI can look at softer matching criteria, so it's not just about matching engineers with building jobs. It's about looking at soft skills, attitudes, motivation, aspirations, experience, all in a more kind of granular manner that the AI is theoretically and also practically ready and able to take into account, as opposed to giving a hard stop saying you don't have the right CV, so this is not the right job for you. And it has a high potential to be used for other things. We already heard gamification, that's used in a couple of assessment situations, but this can also be augmented by augmented reality, by virtual reality. It can create situations of work testing, and it has, of course, a large potential still with large language models. There are a lot of challenges. Operational implementation is not always, we talked about cost cutting, but it's not always obvious from a public service point of view how this is going to help the business model, if you want to call it a business model in that context. Is the investment worth it? There's no clear evidence for that yet. There is a huge level of staff resistance in public services. And not only from the staff, but also from the management. It's also staff, but like all levels. The data quality is sometimes poor. Data safety is an issue. And there is still an understanding that AI and the use of AI is an IT issue and not a strategy or management issue. So the leadership has not arrived there yet. But there are a couple of good examples. And I'm actually not a big fan of this best practice tourism, of bringing best practices somewhere and saying this is how it works. But there are a couple of lighthouses or a couple of examples that one could take ideas from. So France, for example, has what they call the intelligence en plat. Excuse my bad French accent, and that's improving working conditions for staff through reducing the caseloads. They introduced from the beginning a system where the AI would prepare decisions, what would be a good program for a job seeker, what would be a good work testing or apprenticeship situation for an employer. But then the advisor working in the public employment service has the ultimate decision. So the AI is basically just giving a well-informed, well-prepared basis for deciding. So it's a human-AI interaction that is built into their delivery system, as opposed to having different departments, one dealing with the AI, the other one not, etc. The programs are always personalized, so it's not throwing active labor market programming on target groups, like all women do this active labor market program, all people with disability do this active labor market program, but to tailor make it with the help of AI. So this component from this program might be good for this job seeker. This job seeker is choosing to go on this path with this employer who's offering this type of apprenticeship or work testing. So it's more individualized, and the AI is able to navigate through program components. And then they have what they call an AI factory, which is basically an innovation lab where they meet with potential co-creators to develop new applications. So that's software companies, but it's also employers, it's users, job seekers, who come together in a room, in an innovation lab. I've been there, to look at specific AI products and say, this is working, this is not working, this is how we could improve it. In Germany, it's a little bit more scattered. It doesn't have such a, let's say, mainstream use of AI, but they have pockets of programs where they use AI that are interesting. The so-called competence compass extracts skills from vacancies and creates perspectives. It looks through huge amount of vacancy data to look, okay, this is what is needed, but not only the job title, but the skills that are presented in a job vacancy. And from that, create patterns of types of skills you need and connect that to career guidance in the public employment services so that it's not detached, which it often is. There's the Now platform, which quality assures skills training. So it's AI sifting through evaluations and assessments of skills training and looking whether that's complies with quality standards. And then they have a small initiative, but also interesting, in the social intranet of the public employment service, which is the biggest public employment service in the world, to look for toxic communication and improve that. And I think large language models have a huge potential to improve communication in that respect. Can be small changes that make a big difference. Flanders, a part of Belgium, in my view, the most developed public employment service in the world, at least in many respects, and certainly in the use of AI, has exchanged a traditional rule-based matching. Here is a job, here is the skills, let's try and match it. Aha, it doesn't match, okay, though, so it's a failed match. It looks with a more granular system based on multimodal architecture so this skills could also be used for a different type of job. Or if you get this training, you would be able to do the job you're looking for, or a similar job. Or have you thought of a completely different job that would address your interests that you indicated, or address the skills and your interests? And they have a skills-based profiling that also takes in experience and is based on the European system for coding of skills, ESCO. Just very briefly, the product features of PAS that are developing now is natural language processing. So not only looking at the skills in a profile, but also at the free text in vacancies, labeling that, categorizing that, and matching that with the skills that a profile of and CVs of job seekers have, but also with training. I think one of the big problems of public employment services, or maybe HR in general, is that it's not connected enough with training, education. It's two parallel worlds. And I think AI has a great potential based on what it reads to match that better. And yeah, I already mentioned it. Language generators that can help.
Mr. Peromingo, 5 minutes left.
That can help job advisors advise. And one last feature that is coming now is emotional AI, which will react to how a job seeker is responding to advice emotionally. And that can be face reactions, but there can also be reactions in written responses that are not immediately obvious and can be built into the tailor-made reaction then from a job advisor. So AI is a colleague now. It's because, I mean, AI is potentially, it's an agent, it's not a tool anymore, so it potentially could be a colleague, which means that career advisors may use their soft skills better than they used before. They don't have to be so focused on administrative tasks of filling in the registration right, on following up on whether the job seeker is coming to the next appointment. They can focus on helping the job seeker. They clearly need to be involved for that. There are a couple of examples that I don't want to mention, but there are a couple of examples of employment services that didn't involve their staff enough, and it backfired badly when they introduced AI. Managers might be more scared than staff. That's something to take into consideration. This is not just a frontline issue. This is something that needs to be addressed at the highest levels and all levels of the company. And AI can only approximate values, so don't put AI in charge of values of the public employment service and the employability service. Don't put it in charge of the ethics. That's our responsibility. And studies by several reviews papers have found out that best you put AI on the first level of service. So when the HR part is starting, they have quite an acceptable reliability. If you put them at later stages, job interviews, etc., then they're perceived as creepy. And yeah, coming to the end, basically, if you put AI as a colleague or as a service component, it's you need trust. And the prerequisites for trust for AI, the same as for humans, is you need to make sure it's something good. Don't make it your enemy. Don't make it the enemy of the job seeker or the employer. Have it a competent service with data quality and integrity. Don't tell one thing one time and one thing the other, and don't try to back introduce something with AI, but always be transparent. And finally, the steps towards the perspective of AI. I think it's good to assess what exactly should be automated in employability services. So not because it can be automated, it has to be automated. It doesn't make sense to automate the more complex parts of the service. There is bias, for sure. We have heard a lot about it, so it needs to be fed with the right data. Bias is a problem of humans and the data we produce, not a problem of the AI. And it's good to identify who is benefiting from introducing AI and who is being isolated by it, because those that are left behind will not come back. So it's good to address that in the beginning. And yes, you can augment services by linking it to other related services. I think public employment services not only deal with employment or employability, but they deal a lot with health, well-being, and education, also science. And AI is a good, has a great potential to break silos. And that's why I think even if it's not that well developed yet, it has a huge potential and it should be embraced. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for staying with us after lunch. It's always tough. Thank you very much to the Ministry of Education of Korea, and thank you to Krivet for this invitation. It's always a pleasure from the ILO to collaborate with you. So thank you for that. Before we start, I wanted to share with you that at the beginning of October, we launched new AI observatory as part of the ILO. The ILO is a specialized agency from the United Nations looking at the world of work. And in the last couple of years, we had had a large increase in requests surrounding AI and the impact. So what are the jobs of the future? What are the skills of the future? What should governments start doing today? What should training institutions start doing today, right? So in order to help a little bit on that, we have put together this AI observatory where you will find a number of research and a number of publications and articles with facts and figures. And also for your information, we're working with our constituents, so with 197 countries in a specific regulation to help with platform economy. So platform economy will still take a couple of years to be ready, but it is going to be very much related to AI and algorithmic management, but also it could lead into future additional regulations to help making sure that in the future we have proper ethical boundaries and protection for workers around the world. So, a few facts and figures. Some of these numbers might have a few years, but they are still good. I mean, we can see that the world is changing very fast. We still have 60% of the people having internet access, so we still have 40% not having access. We have a very large penetration of mobile phones, so 3/4 of the world population do have access to mobile phone. And we can see the fast acceleration of adoption of new technologies. The latest example is ChatGPT, that just in a couple of months passed the 100 million users. So the world is changing very fast. We still have to analyze in more depth what does it mean from the world of work. Here are some numbers from the World Economic Forum saying that from today, this was published in 2023, by the way, until the end of 2027, they say 6 out of 10 workers will require training in that time. And that training might be either upskilling or reskilling. So it might either require you to seize the opportunity to use these new technologies, among which is AI, or for you, your job be completely displaced, so it will disappear, so you would need to reskill yourself to find another job. Either or, this is a multi-million people issue. All around the world, governments are looking into what to start doing today so that the fast pace of acceleration of new technologies can be absorbed properly. Of course, digital divide. As you can see, 2.6 billion people still do not have access. And AI seems to open a new bridge. There used to be the digital divide, now it's the AI divide. There are big questions around if AI will again represent a gap, or if, on the other hand, it will become a leapfrogging opportunity for many developing countries. This here, it's a bit small, but basically what it shows is all the different ramifications of the usage of AI. and how they are accelerating. The little line you have at 0 represents the human level, right? So how fast has been the adoption of AI for recognizing language, so you can see the trend. And the latest is the predictive analytics that is really becoming a main trend, where the algorithm can really help us not only analyzing what has happened, but starting analyzing what could happen into the future, which is very much linked to the conversation we're having today here. Some other more facts and figures for you. This is a correlation between the adoption of AI and countries and size of companies. So we can see a clear correlation that largest economies and largest companies are much more advanced in the adoption of AI. And again, from a United Nations perspective, we wonder, are we yet again creating a gap? So what needs to happen to prevent that this is not advancement for a few and there are many left behind? So again, some facts and figures. This is an analysis we did last year to look into jobs. So what are the jobs that are going to be impacted by AI and to which extent? So on this side of the graph, you have more managerial jobs. So we can see that these jobs are going to be mostly augmented, meaning that managers are going to be, let's say, smart about using ChatGPT to do your job faster. Whereas, on the other hand, these are jobs that are going to be much more impacted, so automated, displaced. And these are mostly clerical jobs. So we can already see from our first analysis that most of the impact of augmentation is going to be on managerial jobs and on displacement on clerical jobs. Additionally, we have some findings that are interesting. So first of all, the larger automation could happen within men in the low and medium income countries. This means that, to a certain extent, digital divide has become like a barrier preventing the impact of AI. Since you don't have access to AI, it cannot take your job, so to speak, right? The other finding is that, and you can see it at the bottom here, is the most impacted population is women, mostly in the global north, in the more developed countries. So interestingly, AI is going to have an impact, again, in the gender unbalance, right? So most women in clerical jobs in the global north will be impacted in the short term by AI. This analysis, by the way, has been done just looking at AI in isolation, right? So AI seems to be replacing brains, not arms and legs. If you combine AI with robotics, then the picture will be completely different because you will be able to replace a lot of other manual jobs, right? So this is a partial view of what is happening, but we're now looking into, what will be the further analysis of the further impact of AI and robotics. Now, let's jump into the areas of concern. So the first area of concerns, and some of my co-panelists have already touched on this, is bias and discrimination. AI, as we know it today, so LLM, large language models, they are just a handful in the world. We heard in the introduction that the professor said we needed like $100 million to create a new LLM. Well, I don't know if that figure is correct, but beyond that, you'll need a number of years, and you will need a number of data and inputs. And today, there are not that many cultures that still have written legacy. There is a lot of countries that have been working on oral transmission. There is a lot of things that have been destroyed through wars and through years. So it is very difficult to build large language models that are not quote-unquote biased. I was in London a few weeks ago, and we visited with the family the large British library, which supposedly is the largest library in the world. It has 300 million books, right? And I was asking to myself, is this library biased? What do you think? Because we all, as humans, are biased, and our history books are full of biases, and and imperialism and colonialism. And so the models today are fed with this historical data. So the models are biased already. Now, if you're going to use a model created by a 30-year-old Catholic male from the global north, AI, OpenAI, for example, is that relatable to your context. Can you sub-program it so that it answers to your liking? Probably yes, but at the core, the kernel, the core of the model is bias. So governments around the world need to think very hard on creating their own models so that we're not all using the same 4 or 5 models that are out there. This is a big concern, from a geopolitical standpoint, because today we're all using the same tools that are in the hands of 4 or 5 companies. Here you can see some other consequences of using AI, so risk of unfair treatment based on protected characteristics, potential for reinforcing systemic inequalities in jobs. Those things, it was funny, the father of AI that was in the opening, right? He said, well, these models might be unfair. I don't see it. I'm white. I'm from the north, right? So yeah, that may be a view of it. But even if you're white from the north, you can see that the models are perpetuating biases within your context that you might not necessarily agree with. And that we see today. The truth, again, and continue with my comparison with the British Library, is are we not biased today when we're doing hiring processes? Are we all hoping that AI is a magical tool that is going to solve our human flows? Like today, we are not fair. We are not being, completely transparent. We are discriminatory, discriminating, and we are biased. So we need to be thinking very careful on how we build the tools of the future so that this is not perpetuated. The second big area of concern is privacy and data. So, okay, being European, we have GDPR, which is a big headache for everybody, but we feel protected because our data cannot be accessed without our consent. It cannot be stored, it cannot be manipulated or used for processing, right? That is not necessarily the case from all the countries in the world, and that would magnify with the usage of AI. So every time you're using AI, even though you have the premium version, your data is going to the servers of a company that is using it to make the model better. And little by little, they know who you are, your age, where you live, what is the name of your kids, whatever kind of funny situations you might have at work. And all this data, it can be used against you. So you need to be very careful with that. And from a government standpoint, the regulations need to be put in place to protect the privacy in the data. Here we added a line that seems a bit far-fetched, but is the usage of biometric and neural information. This is becoming a thing. There are more and more companies that are, through your work, using data that is not what you write, but is what you feel. It might be a monitor with your heart rate, it might be your temperature, your speed, your pace, or soon enough, whatever you're thinking. If you're thinking the last company of Mr. Musk, Neuralink, right? This data needs to be protected too, because it could be also maliciously used against you, right? So this needs to be protected. Then, of course, data breaches. So the more data we have, the more attractive for people that want to steal it. And then the concerns of using this data beyond the intended purposes. So yes, sometimes you do share some data. It could be health-related data, for example, and that data is then later used for unintended consequences. And again, someone in the opening made it an example out of your insurance not insuring you because they know they won't make a good business out of you. The third part, and my colleagues also touched on it, so the lack of human touch. So the more we use AI, the less human touch we're going to have. You cannot relate. When someone talks to you, maybe because I'm Mediterranean, right? So we like drama and emotions and contact, right? But hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from this. Oh, how are you? You link with people, and that is something that in our guts we feel this is a human, genuine interaction. The more and more we will not be able to determine if the person in the other side of the line or the other side of the WhatsApp or whatever, it's human or it's an algorithm. We will. The line between what is generated organically and what is generated synthetically is blurring very fast. So these, some of us might like or not, but is really going to have a big impact on how do we relate with one another. So let me just jump into algorithmic management. It's a big area for us. We have categorized it in 3 big areas. So one is direction, the second one is evaluation, and the third one is discipline, right? And those 3 can then be broken down into further areas and even sub-areas, right? But if we think about algorithmic direction, we're thinking on algorithmic staffing. So how do you hire, the people? How do you put them in the right place? Who is going to be doing what and when? The algorithmic coordination is looking into how do we, enhance as we go the opportunities. So you could think Uber drivers, right? So how do you allocate the ride to the closest or to the best or to whatever? Algorithmic evaluation has different parts, one of which is hiring, which is very much relevant for PES, right? Which is how do you use an algorithm to determine who is the best candidate for a certain job? And that, in the previous presentation, you had a few examples on how could this happen. There is a lot of examples that are ongoing, some of which are a bit unhuman, I would say, some of which are good. At the end of the day, if there is a human checking what the machine is proposing, we're more or less fine. The issue is when you leave these things unsupervised and just taking the decisions. So you get the job.
5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Because machine said no. But why? Again, you could argue that today when you get to seek for a new position and you're not selected, you just receive an automatic email saying thank you for your candidacy. You're not retained at this time. But they don't tell you because they don't. You don't have the proper skills, or you don't speak proper English, or they don't like your gender or your race. They don't tell you that, right? But we expect the algorithm to do it. Last but not least, the discipline. So it's either the positives, so the incentives, or the sanctions, right? The negatives. And all these things can be automated, and there is many examples on how this is working today, right? Let me just jump to the recommendations. So we put together a number of recommendations for employment services that we believe could be of help given the new challenges that we just described, right? So first, there needs to be robust data protection measures for the reasons I shared before. All these models feed on data, and this data is stored and processed and accessed and managed by a number of people, and that needs to be in a very secure way. There is something that in the European law we invented called the right to forget, right? The issue when something of your data is published on a social media, let alone in a PES server, is that it's never erased. So think about the unintended consequences of that. If some data is sensitive, is stored maliciously or not somewhere, you can never erase it. So this is better to be prevented rather than trying to solve after the fact. There is a need to promote diversity on AI development teams. So that I mentioned before, the algorithms. So I think at the core of the issue is you might continue playing games with OpenAI and Claude and Llama, and but there are 5 of them. At some point, governments need to create, facilitate private investment for creating models that are diverse and legit to your own context. If not, you will always be using someone else's algorithm, which at the core, again, as I said before, is based on 600 years of literature from the global north. So you will end up just replicating what other people have been doing and not your own reality. There need to be very clear AI policies. So that is a very first step where you need to tell the do's and don'ts to your people. So how do we use this AI? Do you need to declare it? How do you, in which context? These rules need to be defined. Then you can change them, but you need to have at least a first go at how those rules are defined. And this is for PES, for governments, for associations, or for private companies. It is very important to write down these AI policies. Then there is a need for doing regular audits. So, okay, you put all these rules, but then you need to check, is this really working? And that is the way to then conduct, okay, so let's change this. This is not working, and so having audits is, I believe, a great recommendation for this. literacy training. So we're all about lifelong learning and training, upskilling, and building capacity. So definitely, everybody needs to learn. I think we had a good example in the plenary too on the previous session, colleagues from Singapore saying we have gone through all these mandatory trainings. Absolutely, that's the way. You cannot lead without giving the example, right? Then creating easy or accessible feedback mechanisms. So the final user needs to be able to tell you, yeah, I don't understand that, or that is not fair, or I need more information, so that you can capture it. If it just talks to a machine and the machine just say, I'm sorry, which is, again, not a very truthful message, even though they're good at apologizing, they don't really apologize. This needs to be escalated to a human that gets the feedback and understand, is this really working or not? Then ensure that humans oversight. So as I said, don't put the machine in control. You can put the machine to automate a lot of things, but then you need to oversight, So that is a very fundamental point. I'm seeing some colleagues playing with some plugins in Outlook that you can automate the reply to your emails. It's funny at first until your boss says, hey, great, great job, well done. Say, what are you talking about? You lose control. You cannot leave the machine taking action on your behalf. It can recommend to you what you're going to answer to your boss. It can recommend to you what you're going to answer to a candidate, but you shouldn't put it in an automation. And then last but not least, increase the transparency. So I think it's important that everybody knows from the get-go what are the rules, that people know that behind there is an algorithm. You need to put some kind of disclaimers and, this is something we're trying. These are the benefits that we expect, but you need to be transparent. We cannot fake that people think they're talking to a human or expect that someone is going to answer if there is an algorithm behind. Last but not least, I think overall we need to maintain this balance between digitalization and efficiency or access inclusion. If we don't force this, if we don't have the proper regulations to make sure that there is these ethical boundaries, if we do not keep the humans at the center and in control, we might end up having all these benefits just for a few and not for the very large workers of the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much. Now we have three excellent presentations. Each presentation has help us to see things from different perspectives. Professor Lee presents his paper from a sort of macro perspective, and also Mr. Peromingo, Peromingo, presents his paper to so more micro perspective and so on, and also workers' rights and ethnical background. And Mr. Juan, also he helped us see things from peers, public improvement service perspective, and so on. Now we have finished this session by 3:30, but maybe we can have a couple of minutes since next session will start at 4 o'clock. I have a couple of questions here, and could you put your machine in your hand, Mister? Did you put your machine in your hand? Actually, the first question, I think I need to select a couple of questions to be answered from the list, so maybe I will go for what I like it. And first question to be question is this one. This is in Korean, but I'm the personal recruitment people in the company. Now there are companies doing service for recruiting companies for AI-based interview service, also application, document evaluation, and so on. But we don't know how this service is carried out through what criteria or procedures. And to some extent, the job seekers has less access to information than companies. Then if there are some government regulation guideline concerning this case from any other countries, any country in the world, Who can answer this question? So, to both of you? I don't know.
Yeah, take time.
Yeah. No? Okay. So from ILO, then maybe. Well, UN organization should answer this.
Is this on? Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I cannot give a very differentiated answer there. If I understood the question right, if there is government regulation on which, if interviews and recruitment is AI-based, no? Whether this is regulated. So I know of countries where it's prohibited, so employers are not allowed to do that. In countries where it's allowed, but then it's also not fully transparent how employers are doing it. As I mentioned in my presentation, research has found out that job seekers, because at the end of the day, it's about how job seekers are responding also to this recruitment. It's not only about finding the right people, it's about how the job seekers respond to it. If AI is used in the first levels of a recruitment process, for example, by sifting through CVs, by matching skills, by inviting people, then it's generally accepted. So, in my humble opinion, there is not such a high demand for regulation there. It gets tricky when AI is used for job interviews, and the criteria on which job interviews are based, the way questions are formulated, and what is then done with it, that's if that is not transparent, because that is rejected usually by job seekers. But as also Juan Ivan mentioned, it has not been less transparent before. Its recruitment process as such is a very intransparent process. So AI has the potential to make it better. It should not be scaled. The intransparency shouldn't be scaled. I'm not sure that regulation is the only pathway into controlling that, but maybe it's a good chance for the companies also to look at how they could use AI to make it transparent, also in their own interest.
Okay, thanks so much. So, you.
Thank you for the question. Today, there are not many AI regulations out there. You have the AI executive order of Mr. Biden in the United States, issued in December 2023, which is recommendation. It's not enforcing anything, but it's there, and it has some touches on how you should go about the world of work. I don't think recruitment process are there as such, but that usage of AI and algorithmic management should be declared. This is one of the areas. Then you have the European Union AI Act that was released also early this year, where you also have some indications on how this could be used. And there are two areas that I remember. One is that it needs to be transparent and declared, so you need to say, which is part of the presentation. The other one is, I don't remember the exact word, but it needs to be traceable. So if the computer, the algorithm gives you an answer, you need to be able to explain how the algorithm reached that answer. It needs to be traceable in the sense that it needs to justify and explain how it reached a certain conclusion. It cannot just say, the computer figured it out. No, it needs to explain step by step how it went. There are not many other regulations. The UK has one, the Commonwealth, so countries like Canada, South Africa, Australia, they are following also there. There is one in Rwanda, for a reason, this very small country in Africa that they have been very fast at doing that. China has also published some, but there are bits and pieces. There is not an harmonious regulated framework just yet. It will take a few years. I think regulators were always late by default because we need to see what is the impact. If you start regulating too soon, then it might not be effective at all. So it will take some time, but it will get there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, maybe.
I would also like to point out that even without considering AI, right, there's unevenness across countries in terms of regulating, say, discrimination. Yeah. So there are variances of legislations on equality, diversity, and inclusion, right? So regulations give us the minimum threshold, the baseline from which we can start practicing human resource. But it's not necessarily the most ideal or ultimate goal. So, I mean, companies or public corporation organizations always have to go beyond this kind of minimum required. But in certain categories, such as like sex, gender, or race, or certain social categories, the legislations are relatively clear in terms of representation, discrimination, and so on, and remuneration. But in other criteria like age, for example, many countries are developing rapidly aging population structure, and labor market actually is becoming very volatile and also fluctuating in terms of accommodating different kind of age groups in the labor market and so on. So, categories like age or even other categories that are more, say, fluid, more value-based kind of preferences and so on, we cannot really regulate those factors very well, right? When it comes to AI can very cleverly avoid discrimination strictly on the basis of these well-established legal criteria, whereas at the same time, AI can depict probably 100 more or 1,000 more criteria for discriminating candidates. Because ultimately what AI has to do is to rate certain candidates superior or better than the other candidates on what basis. Those are the criteria, but we may not be fully aware of or familiar with the kind of combinations or correlations that AI may come up with in terms of finding meaningful patterns among numerous candidates and so on. So these kind of nascent or not yet obvious social characteristics may become made conspicuous and made discriminatory because of AI's process of optimization and efficiency. And we're not yet aware of that. And we're not even prepared to deal with all the traditional criteria of social discrimination and so on. And they're not fully legislated. So I think we have quite a long way to go. So as many people have mentioned that, it's an incremental process. And the only good thing about it is AI itself is not necessarily biased. So depending on how adaptive we are, how prepared we are to correct our, say, misjudgment or wrong decision making, we can retrain AI, for example. We can correct unintended consequences of AI-based errors as we go along, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. And also another question. This is quite interesting. Now, AI-based improvement service can be introduced or utilized in education sector, and especially in university professor invitations. That what should university prepare for introduction of this kind of AI-based recruiting in selecting professors? Is possible?
So I'm not sure I completely understood the question. Are we ready to use AI for what, sorry?
For university professor recruiting.
Oh, professors, yeah, okay, sorry for that. A month ago, we were giving a speech in Bahrain, in the Gulf, and we had a professor from Stanford University, and that very same question came to her. And she had a very interesting answer. She said, you know what, everybody is using AI, and so when I give to my students an assessment, an exercise, I give them already the answer from ChatGPT, and say, now impress me, and that was the consequence of them being retrained, because before that, 2 years ago, when ChatGPT started booming, the directive of the university was, it is forbidden to use ChatGPT. And they were very fast in upskilling their teachers to say that is not the smart way. The world is going in that direction. You are the leaders of the world. You're in the Stanford University in the Silicon Valley, where all these things started. You cannot say you cannot use this, right? So they were very fast at adopting, and now they are all trained in how to use it. You cannot ban it. You need to use it. No? So I know they have a number of mandatory courses themselves, and they're using AI to in 24/7 tutoring, so they use it in a smart way. But they have also changed the culture of the house, where, this is fast forward thinking, like 20 years ago when you were going for a job interview, or you were sending a motivation letter, a cover letter, and it needed to be handwritten. And you need to put your curriculum and everything and send it by the post, and the recruiter will read it. You would even put perfume so that it will, be taken, differently from the others in the pile. And at that time, when people were using Word Perfect 7, whatever it was, the ancestor, people would say, "Oh, he's cheating. He didn't take the time to write properly the letter. He just changed, Samsung and put Hyundai, and this person is cheating." Fast forward 20 years, nobody is handwriting a letter anymore. And the same is happening with these models. Today, there is still this barrier of, if you're using it, it's not ethically right, you're cheating. You should declare it, Think again in 20 years. Everybody will be using it. Nobody will be writing things out of their own brain, as we're not writing or handwriting anything today. And I think this is the importance of understanding where things might be going and adapting today, because teachers need to create today the students and the leaders of the future. If you don't start creating the brains today for that they are ready in 20 years, it will be too late. So I think the Stanford were right.
Great. Professor Lee, maybe you have something to say?
I think universities are not yet really entirely relying on AI for recruiting students or professors, for that matter. But the logic behind selecting good, candidates, either for university entry, graduate schools, or professors, have dramatically changed over the last, say, 20 years especially, if I consider my 30-year career. So I've been sitting on University Promotions Committee for the last 4 years. And the way we decide, right, is very numerical. So let's say we are recruiting, say, 2 professors in marketing, right? And then there are like 45 applications, right? And we create a table in terms of publications, and then we rate journals in terms of, scores and so on. So basically, we screen out 90% of them, and then we take like 10% of them in terms of these numbers, if you like, right? So it's analogous to AI. AI will do much better job, right, than human counting in this. And then we add a little bit of our personal bias on top of that kind of numerical counting, right? That's more or less how we select people in universities. Very archaic, and yet pretend to be fair and balanced. Just what I'm saying, because you have certain criteria, 5 factors and numbers, A, B, C, D, and stuff like that. And compared to when I was applying for jobs so long ago, 1992, right? That was my first experience when I was very young. Then, I wasn't sure how they select people. But in fact, at least in the UK, the most important thing to become a university teacher, lecturer, was smartness. People are looking for smart people. What the hell is smartness, right? And then when I actually got my first job on campus, I could hardly see any Black or Asian full-time teaching staff. Only a few like postdocs, researchers, but proper like a tenure track teaching staff, almost unseen, so rare. So if you see somebody African or Asian on staff canteen, I would go and introduce myself. Oh, so happy to see you. You are one of us, kind of thing, right? That's 30 years ago. But if I think of it, it's a bit of a romantic time. although there may be huge racial bias in that system, at least the notion of smartness, right, gave them the romance, if you like, of trusting deeply into the professional integrity and autonomy that all these people, academics, have built over, say, 100 years or something like that. So that autonomy and that sort of dignity or integrity is gone now. Yeah. Whether we use AI or not. So my prediction is, in one way or another, AI will come into place of selecting people in university.
Okay, thank you. And you have something to say?
I think AI can do same well job to recruit a professor than to recruit a bricklayer. It can be very good in sifting through information, through publications, check the writing style of the professor, check what he or she has accomplished. That can be done by AI. It's probably not doing such a good job when it comes to the personal. What can this professor bring in as a person? What can the bricklayer bring in as a person? What's the specific features of this person? Why should it be? Why should the person be favored over others? So the bricklayer put him in front of a couple of bricks, let him or her make a wall, and the professor put him or her in front of students and see how he performs. This is something that is better done in personal conversations, in human testing. So I think there is no difference there. It's just the way of when to use what.
Okay, thanks so much. Now is time to finish this session, and I can now summarize all this remarkable presentation and question answers, but I think the one last sentence which can summarize our today's session is this, just Mr. Latai said the balancing is important, quite crucial for all these changes and so on. Thank you so much.
In one sentence, okay. I think we are all responsible to create a society that is fair and human. It is in our hands. This was a sentence. Now I can give you more. When we watch the dystopian movies like The Matrix or The Terminator or whatever, we think that technology is going to come here and destroy our world, etc. Technology is not fate. It's not written. It's the consequence of how we regulate it today and how we manage it. And it is a responsibility, and it is in our hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
AI has a magical feel to it, but it's not magic, so it will not magically solve the issues that we have not been able to solve ourselves, but it can help us and augment and accelerate our own solutions.
I think AI poses more questions and challenges than providing answers. In the absence of reliable and trustworthy authority, I think we should always call back the state. Even though we are deeply suspicious of the intentions of politicians and the brutality of power of the state, still, I think if that is democratically elected government and they do have the mandate to bring about the best out of people, therefore I think we have to push the state to be accountable and responsible for providing spaces to debate these issues and search for even partial solutions for the problems that we encounter today. So I will call for the role of the state in transforming the society with AI. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, and congratulations to all of us for mission completed. Thank you so much.
네, 감사드립니다. 네, 고용 서비스에서 실제 AI를 활용할 수 있는 사례들과 함께 또 주의할 수 있는 부분에 대해서도 깊게 생각해 봤던 것 같습니다. 진행해 주신 교수님과 연사분들께 다시 한번 저희 감사드리겠습니다.